We did see that brief respite following the election results, which seemed to kind of, satiate, I suppose, some of those protesters. But we're seeing this resumption back to what's been the new normal over the past almost 6 months.
Yeah, this might be a case of, the protesters, one, they're emboldened by that district council election victories over the pro-establishment / pro-Beijing candidates, the pro-democracy candidates, that is, and also the Trump signing of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. Exacerbated by then Carrie Lam, the chief executive here, not giving in to any of the concessions. So status quo on the local government front. So that kind of built up some, animosity again, even more if that's possible, and emboldened by those other electoral victories. So they did take to the streets. It started brewing again Saturday evening when protesters started marching. They also set fire to an MTR entrance. It continued on Sunday. There was a fairly peaceful march in support of the U.S. action up to the U.S. consulate, which is nearby here in Central. But then it turned more sour in the evening, and there was some tear gas that was fired to disperse the protesters in Tsim Sha Tsui, which was the key tourist area and the tip of the Kowloon Peninsula. There were also some marches and vandalism in Whampoa Gardens in Hong Kong, in a nearby district. All in all, more tear gas is fired, more bricks hurled by the protesters, and more condemnation, I might add, from the Chinese side, from Beijing. We had comments over the weekend from Beijing saying they strongly oppose an opinion piece that was published in the local newspaper, the South China Morning Post, by the UN High Commission for Human Rights, the leader, Michelle Bachelet, who urged for an independent commission or an independent inquiry into police brutality. The Chinese government accused her of meddling and emboldening protesters. Keep in mind as well, the new police commissioner here in Hong Kong, I believe it was on Saturday, said an independent probe would be unjust. So more fuel on the fire for protesters, I would assume.
Steve, does this mean that we'll have no respite for those retail sales numbers? We get another batch this afternoon.
Yeah, retailers have absolutely been battered over the last 6 months or so of this unrest as it has escalated. And even, of course, some of the protesters have taken their ire out on particular shops. We've seen the damage to China-linked companies, the banks, Xiaomi, and others. We're going to get the numbers, and they're going to look bad, according to the economists surveyed by Bloomberg. Look at that. In October, the estimate year-over-year of retail sales down 21.8%. The numbers out later today. We knew it was going to be bad because on Friday we got those tourist arrival numbers. October is the Golden Week. We usually get a surge of mainland Chinese tourists. They shop the most per capita of any foreign arrivals. Those numbers in that Golden Weekend in October down 45.9%. They didn't come, they didn't spend. The retail numbers are going to be bad, and that's going to be spilling over to a lot of these retailers who basically, look, they need the holidays. Whether it's Christmas or the upcoming Chinese New Year, they need those numbers up. And maybe for many of them, it's going to be the last hope. Iris Pang, she's an economist with ING here in Hong Kong. She says there's about a 70% chance that there's going to be a wave, a surge of closures of retail outlets coming in the first quarter of next year if the continued protests and the downward pressure on sales continues.